point guard, averaging 8 to 12 points and better defense than JP. See, I'm looking for some height here.
What's the next big domino to drop for the Golden State Warriors?
Is
it Draymond just
That's the next one.
re-signing?
He's going to announce it today on the golf course.
You think? I mean, I have a hard time thinking now, like, so Clay's going to be there, Dre's going to be there, and they're going to be like, yeah, I'm not playing with you no more. Like 3 days later?
Yeah, he's coming back. And if he comes back, I'm not mad at it.
Well, here's the problem. I want you to hear me out. I think people don't understand the new CBA rules. So if they get over this second apron, which signing Draymond will do, like there is a huge argument that I agree with where losing Draymond for nothing and not getting anything back makes you worse right now. That I don't think anyone would argue that you're better without Draymond or better without those assets. That's not what I'm arguing. But if you want to have flexibility, which everyone's talking about, one of the things that is a constant for all of these big player trades, Durant, CP3 multiple times, Harden, pick the player. If you want Giannis down the line, if you want Zion down the line, if you want Embiid down the line, you're going to have to staple draft picks to whatever players that you're sending back and forth. And part of the nuance of going over that second apron is you can't trade away 7 years worth of draft picks. That's crazy. And so what it does is basically it's limiting. And the people that don't have money, the owners that don't have money said, hey, just because you have all this money and you can overspend, you shouldn't be able to have also the ammunition of draft picks to be able to offset that money to get something back in return. We're going to limit you. So if you do go over that second apron, which signing Draymond's going to do, they really can't attach any draft picks. Can you acquire a superstar down the line or whatever? Yes. It just makes it a lot harder. It makes it a lot harder.
You let Draymond Green walk because what you're saying is making sense from a financial standpoint. But from a human standpoint, hey, tell Steph Curry, that's trying to save money.
No, not save money. I'm trying. Look,
I'm trying to help our salary cap in the future.
Yeah, it would be like, hey,
right.
If you want to be able to team up with one of these other guys, because you're talking about flexibility with CP3, flexibility, Clay's contract, flexibility. If you look at all these big trades, Paul George is a great example. You had to attach 1,000 draft picks to that to be able to acquire that guy. If you want to be able 6 months from now, and again, you're taking a short-term loss on that. But if you want to be able to do that 6 months from now, this is what we have to do. Well, I just think that's a really hard sell to Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Sacrifice a year of your prime so that maybe you could be a player in this, trade market down the line. It's a lot of maybes, ands, ifs, and buts.
You take a short-term loss. You may not get back to this point.
You
may not get back to this point.
It's risky as hell.
I would rather go the other route and say, you know what, we'll bring out Draymond Green and we'll figure out the rest later. That's where my setting is right now.
That is the more likely scenario.
Right. And that's just where my setting is because
they're staring that right in the face, meaning they will have zero flexibility with these caps.
Warrior fans, I think you're underestimating Warrior fans in the way they look at the CBA. They see what's going on. They're understanding, for the most part, they're starting to understand that if you let Draymond Green walk, you can't replace the salary.
No.
But if you keep him, and there's some luxury tax penalties here that could kick in next season, they understand that. They understand. But they're willing to take that chance. Nobody wants to take a short-term loss and take a step back. Nobody.
No one.
Not when you have a top 5 player in the game.
If they sold it to the fans like that, I don't think they would accept it.
No, hell, no chance.
Even though that is I'm not saying it's the smart way of doing it, but it is one of the potential options that's staring them in the face. It's an option. I don't think it's a likely option, and I don't think it's an accepted option by the fans. Nor do I believe that that's an acceptable option for someone like Steph Curry. Mm-hmm. Look, Steph might have 1 year left of his prime. He might have 2 years left, 3 years. We don't know. But I highly doubt he's going to walk into a season at this age, given where he's been, and say, let's see what happens 6 months from now. Right. I'm more worried about 6 months from now than now. But I'm just playing that side of it because I was reading up on that CBA stuff.
It is nasty.
And boy, they really screwed. They went out of their way, the other owners, to screw the Warriors.
Well, Fred Katz, who covers the Wizards for The Athletic, said he got a text from a salary cap somebody who runs a salary cap in the NBA, and he goes, "This is hard."
Yeah.
He goes, "This is going to be brutal. This is tough. I'm getting a headache from it." So we could talk more about it.
Guys that
Howard
run
Beck.
taxes and stuff said that it's more complicated than any tax code they've ever come across.
Let's talk to Howard Beck about it here. Howard Beck, of course, longtime national NBA beat writer and reporter, been covering the league for over 25 years, and we love having him on the roast. Howard, good morning. Welcome back to 95.7 The Game, and we're going to see how well the Net Warriors navigate around this new CBA because, boy, you read through it, and it gives me a headache. It is complicated, Howard.
Good morning, fellas. It's always complicated. It's always been complicated, and every new version gets more complicated. And I think as you guys were bringing me in, you were referring to the tax code, and that's the analogy that I've always made and that people around the league have always made, which is that every time you, quote unquote, reform or update or whatever the tax code or the NBA CBA, it just gets thicker, more complicated, more headache-inducing. You can only imagine being the lawyers who actually had to craft the thing. Not getting any easier for us in media and or NBA fans to understand just how to navigate the thing, and it's tough, and specifically and especially for the high-spending teams like the Warriors and the Clippers, who, frankly, a lot of this was aimed at.
Yeah, so the Warriors, if they re-sign Draymond Green, let's just say hypothetically it's a 3-year, $90 million contract. What does that mean for their salary cap moving forward here for the next year?
I mean, guys, I've not done the math.
Okay.
I do not have spreadsheets in front of me. All I can tell you is there were probably 15 different reasons to make the Jordan Poole-Chris Paul swap, but not least of which is that Chris Paul's on a 1-year deal effectively, and Jordan Poole's on a huge contract that whether you think it's worthwhile or not, and that he'll live up to or not, they might not simply be able to afford if they're keeping Draymond Green and potentially extending Klay Thompson or re-signing Klay a year from now. So, as your listeners have probably heard, there's, all kinds of new penalties that are way beyond luxury taxes. You can't just say, we don't care how much we'll spend, we'll just keep going. No, in the new CBA that takes effect Saturday, there are penalties that involve losing every avenue, every tool you can possibly think of to keep adding to your roster. And the best example is that if this were in effect a year ago, they would not have been able to sign a Dante DiVincenzo. And so, if you're losing cap exceptions, if you're losing sign-and-trade abilities, if you're losing the ability to aggregate players in a trade, if you're losing the mid-level exception, those things are going to hurt you, even if you still have a bunch of stars. You need role players. And, the fact that we have now seen multiple teams do either a salary dump, and the Wizards needed to dump Bradley Beal anyway, but like the Hawks straight up just dumped John Collins, a good player still in his prime, who's not on a terrible contract, and who could have gotten them a lot more in return in previous years when he was dangled. They straight up gave away John Collins. That has to do with the new CBA. The news late last night that the Clippers were going to cut ties with Eric Gordon has everything to do with this new CBA. So keep an eye on all of this, because this is going to be like the summer of the salary dump.
Removing emotion, what is the basketball on court? Like, what is the argument for staying with Steph, Klay, and Draymond for the next couple of years, hypothetically?
The argument for it, all sentiment aside, is Steph Curry is still playing like an MVP. And as long as he is, I've often said this, you do everything possible to extend this era. And this era has included Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, and Klay, was a little up and down, but still had a pretty great season, considering where he's been. And Draymond is still incredibly impactful. And if I don't know what the alternative is. If you're letting those guys go, who are you putting around Steph Curry that have a better chance of, helping him get back to the finals than those two?
Yeah, I'm with you. Howard Beck here on the Morning Rush on 95.7 The Game. Do you anticipate the Warriors making any other big moves here as the free agency period begins tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific?
Big moves? No, seems unlikely. I mean, the pull for Chris Paul was pretty dramatic in itself.
Right.
And, there aren't a whole lot of other levers to pull. If we all assume that Draymond's going to re-sign, and I believe that's where this is headed, if you believe that they're going to hold on to Klay Thompson, I don't know about the extension, but at a minimum, they're going to keep him. Unless you're trading Andrew Wiggins, and I don't suspect that's in the cards, I don't know that there's a lot of other big levers to pull. And this is going to be, they're now going to be in this position of trying to figure out, on the one hand, not paying Draymond Green so much that it inhibits their ability to add significant role players, but at the same time, not wanting to offend Draymond Green, who's really important to them and who, is certainly worthy of whatever he's going to be asking for in a new salary. So it's a tough needle to thread for them, for everyone right now. They clearly need to replenish the bench a little bit. I'm still curious to see, how determined are they to hang on to, say, Kuminga and Moody? Because, again, limited number of levers you can pull in this league, and even more so if you're a high-spending team and even more so under the CBA. So if you're trying to improve the bench, do you think that your young guys are ready to make the kind of impact this coming season that they couldn't last season? Or now that you have made it kind of an all-in on the present move and swapping young Poole for older Chris Paul, do you just keep going down that path?
That's a great question. Now the dust is settled on the Bob Myers departure, Dunleavy elevation. What is the consensus around the league regarding that situation for the Warriors GM?
I don't know if there's a consensus. I mean, I think people just kind of feel like, well, start with the Bob Myers part of it. I think it's pretty understood that is a significant departure. That, the game is played on the court, the game is played by the players, and Steve Kerr is still the coach. And, it's easy to kind of skip past a front office and think, well, everything's still the same. They're going to run out Steph, Clay, Draymond, and Looney and Wiggins and the supporting cast, and Steve Kerr will still be coaching them. But I do think they've lost something, just institutionally and just kind of, the part of the soul of this run, if I could use that word, in Bob Myers. That Dunleavy has been there in that front office for a bit and has kind of been part of this for a long enough stretch that you feel like he is an intrinsic part of this too. I think matters, and I think look, I was impressed the first move out of the gate. Swapping Poole for Chris Paul is no small thing. There's that wasn't an obvious move to make. It's a move that involves a considerable amount of risk. I know, because I spend too much time on Twitter, it's not entirely popular with all parts of the fan base.
Do you like the trade?
Yeah, I do, actually.
For the Warriors?
I think as a practical matter, getting off of Poole's contract was the right move. I think that as a matter of fit, there are days where it looks like, yep, he's absolutely can be part of this. And look, he helped them win a championship. Like, you can't overlook that. But last season was really rough, and we could, if you want to trace that to the Draymond Green punch and say that that's the reason, whatever it was. I think we've seen enough. Certainly, the Warriors have seen enough to conclude that Jordan Poole is not necessarily the most essential piece, and not worth the price that they had decided to pay him. And Chris Paul, while a strange fit for all kinds of reasons, is still a really impactful player in this league, and they haven't really had any, big-time playmakers off the bench since Iguodala started to get hurt and Sean Livingston retired. Like, I think Chris Paul is going to be great for them.
Yeah, I'm kind of warming up to that as well, Howard. Before we get you out of here, with this Chris Paul deal and a couple tweaks here, the mid-level exceptions, we'll see what the Warriors do. Are they still a factor in the Western Conference to represent the West in the NBA Finals? Is this one of those moves that gets them closer to the NBA Finals?
We always do this in June where a few things happen and we start to try to assess, and we have to keep reminding ourselves that, tomorrow night is when the real business begins, and every team's going to be making a lot more moves. So this answer will change over time. But look, the Nuggets are the far and away clear favorites to go back. But when you look at everybody else, everybody's got flaws, everybody's got question marks, everybody's still got work to do. And to me, the Warriors were better than their record. They've got time now to address some of these things. I do think Chris Paul is a net plus. I do think they will have more moves that are coming. But I think that they are right in the mix, along with the Lakers, a presumably healthy Clippers. I could put the health caveat on the Lakers
right.
too. And the Grizzlies are not going away. And I thought they made a great move in the trade for Marcus Smart. Yeah. I know John Morant's going to be out for about a bit with the suspension, but they'll be fine. The Kings aren't going anywhere, and they've got all this cap room to make an impact move. So it's going to be crowded again.
Would you be shocked if the Kings or any other team landed Draymond Green?
Yes.
Interesting.
Very succinct.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, Draymond's hosting the match today. Are you going to watch that, Howard? Steph Curry, Klay Thompson against Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Draymond's going to be hosting it. There's no way he's hosting that event, not resigning with the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, I'm with B on that.
Steph is the most important voice in the organization, and that's not an exaggeration. Obviously, if Steph wants Draymond back, they're going to find a way to keep Draymond. And the fact that they traded Jordan Poole, I think, also at least is some hint of what they expect. So yeah, I'll be shocked if Draymond goes, but no, I'm not watching. Is that golf? I think that's golf. I'm not watching golf.
Is Zion on the move?
What's that?
Is Zion on the move?
I doubt it.
Okay.
The problem with if I were the Pelicans, I would have concluded long ago. I think it's easy for me to say that I want to move on and get out of the Zion business, but it's such a difficult thing to pull off because for all the reasons that they might want to be out of the Zion business, any other team has to factor in all those same things. And so the hardest thing about trying to figure out a Zion Williamson trade is not do you want him? Okay, you might want to take a flyer on him. Hey, the guy's amazing. He could be a perennial MVP candidate if he stays healthy. But if you're the team making the trade for him, how do you decide what you're willing to give up? And I don't know the answer to that. And I don't even know how to get to the answer because you just don't know how much he's going to play or if he's going to stay healthy, if he's going to, get on track. And there's all kinds of other stuff going on off the court, as you guys know. And I just don't know how to value him in a trade. How much are you truly willing to give up? And if you're the Pelicans, knowing that he might go somewhere else if you trade him and finally get it all together and then become a perennial MVP candidate, and how embarrassing that could be and how much that could backfire on you, how do you value what you need to get back in order to trade him? It's just an impossible thing to assess, I think. And for that reason, I don't think he's going anywhere at the moment.
All right, Howard. Good stuff, man. I know you got a busy weekend ahead of you, man. Happy holidays to you. Happy 4th of July and all that good stuff. Thanks for coming on the show today and spreading some insight on what's happening in the NBA, specifically with the Golden State Warriors. Take care, Howard.
Appreciate it, fellas. Thanks.
Anytime. Howard Beck, national NBA writer, beat reporter, writer, columnist, you name it. He does it all. Howard Beck here on The Morning Rush on 95.7 The Game.